Stopping climate change with moon dust, an X-class solar flare, studying Venus, a damaged Soyuz, and strange spokes in Saturn's rings.
From Trekzone's virtual studio to the world, with early access and behind the scenes for members, this is Trekzone's Talkin' Science.
This is the Bite-Size Podcast, catching you up on the latest science and space headlines. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, and it probably is. But US scientists have calculated if it would be possible to shoot moon dust into space to block the sun's rays before they reach Earth in an attempt to stop the planet from warming. The researchers say dust grains in the right place in space could shade the Earth for up to a week, and moon dust takes less energy to launch than dust from Earth. Apparently, using dust from the lunar surface also avoids any long-term impacts on Earth or our atmosphere. The scientists say roughly 10 billion kilos of material would be needed each year to have a climate impact, which is roughly 700 times more mass than humans have ever launched into space. So I guess suddenly cutting fossil fuel consumption seems like the easier option. Old Kepler data has revealed K2 415b, an Earth-sized exoplanet just 72 light-years away. K2 415 is one of the coolest stars known to host an exoplanet. Another in the list is TRAPPIST-1, which hosts 7. Preliminary estimates plot the exoplanet at about 3 times more massive than Earth, despite having a radius just 1.015 times that of Earth. The team of international researchers studying the data hope to get back to the system and study it in more detail because they say it's a fascinating look at how planets form around these cooler stars. A powerful solar flare erupted from the sun over the weekend. It registered as an X 1.1 class event, came from the so-called active region 3217, and created a temporary radio blackout in South America, according to the US Space Weather Prediction Center. Continued activity from the region is expected as it moves across the solar surface, likely to degrade high-frequency communication, and that's in the 3 to 30 megahertz range. It's expected to produce some pretty intense auroras over the next few days too, with some reported here in Australia, Aurora Australis in Tasmania, looking absolutely stunning. Space exploration with probes is time-consuming and costly, but if you happen to be swinging by an object on your way to your target, well, you might as well check it out. And that's exactly what Bepi Colombo and the Solar Orbiter did en route to their targets of Mercury and the Sun, respectively, as they flew past Venus. The probes were so close to each other that researchers have data sets just an Earth day apart, and the findings have recently been published in Nature Communications. Venus's induced magnetic field sees solar wind interact with charged particles in the atmosphere, creating a magnetosphere. The Solar Orbiter passed just outside, observing solar wind in its calm, undisturbed state. Meanwhile, Bepi Colombo flew through the stagnation region where everything gets churned up. Combining the data sets provided experimental evidence that charged particles are actually slowed down by this region, protecting Venus's atmosphere from erosion by the solar wind. As Space.com says, this is a key discovery to implement for planets beyond our solar system, since astronomers now know that there is a way for exoplanets without an internal magnetic field to retain their atmospheres like Venus has, and therefore possibly even harbour life. Roscosmos has released the first public images of the source of a radiator leak aboard the Soyuz spacecraft docked at the International Space Station. The Russian Space Agency says the pictures show evidence of external damage, likely resulting from a meteoroid impact. The agency says investigations are continuing and they are delaying the launch of a replacement Soyuz until next month as a result. This information comes just 2 days after a coolant leak on board the Progress 82 robotic cargo capsule. Saturn's spoke season has begun. It turns out that with the ringed planet tilted on its axis, it too has 4 seasons, but with a larger orbit in the solar system, each lasts around 7 years. And when the rings tilt edge onto the sun, an equinox is occurring, and mysterious lines known as spokes are observed in the rings. These will become more pronounced as the season culminates around May 2025. For now though, speculation surrounds Saturn's magnetic field for the cause, with solar-wind interaction, likely creating an electrically charged environment. Dust-sized icy particles are possibly being charged and levitated above the rest of the larger particles. The Voyager spacecraft first discovered this interesting attribute in the 80s, and the last equinox was observed by Cassini in 2009. With Hubble joining in observation thanks to its Opal program, we'll have tons more data to sift through in the years to come. ESA's Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, JUICE, has arrived in French Guiana for final launch preps. The 6.2-ton spacecraft will undergo those checks as well as fueling ahead of launch atop an Ariane 5 rocket on April 13. JUICE will then transit for 8 years to Europa, Callisto, and Ganymede, who orbit Jupiter. 10 science payloads and 85 flybys of the moon are in the mission parameters, where we'll learn about the magnetic fields of those moons, diving deep into the subsurface oceans, looking for signs of life. Well, members get perks. Click join under every Trekzone video to sign up and get early access and behind the scenes for less than a cup of coffee a month. For our podcast listeners, jump onto the trek.zone/support. Clicking thanks under the Trekzone's videos enables a one-time contribution, while heading to the trek.zone/PayPal is the most direct route into this podcast budget. Nothing fancy, just my pure dedication to the network for a decade and the website for 2 decades. Do any of them today and have my eternal gratitude, or simply continue watching, liking, and subscribing. That works too. I'm Matt Miller for Trekzone. I'll see you in the comments. Let's chat about the stories today.